What's going on, everyone? I'm Nick with Nick Reads Fantasy, and today I'm going over my top 10 most anticipated reads for 2024. This list isn't going to be in any order. If you follow the channel, you know I'm a huge mood reader, so I'm not even saying these are the first 10 books I'm going to read, but these are the 10 that I'm most looking forward to in the year of 2024. So, let's get started. The first book I'm going to mention on this list is Enemy of God, Book 2 of the Warlord Chronicles by Bernard Cornwell. I'm honestly super surprised I haven't read this book already because I had such a good time with the first book in the series, which is The Winter King. I'm a huge fan of Arthurian stories, and this was probably one of the most original retellings of Arthur I've ever seen. It's showing the story of Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table from the periphery. The main story is not Arthur and the Knights, it's our main protagonist story in the world of Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. And that's why Enemy of God has made it onto my list of top 10 priorities to read in the year of 2024. Next book I'm talking about is Son of a Lich by Zachary Pike. It's book 2 of the Dark Prophets saga, or trilogy now, I think. And this could be an inflammatory statement, but Zachary Pike is to me what Terry Pratchett is to a lot of other fantasy fans out there. Or at least that's the vibes I get based off of his first book, Orconomics, which was incredible. Many people compare Orconomics to Nicholas Eames' King of the Wild, and if you like that, they recommend Orconomics. And I do agree with that. However, I think out of these two books, Orconomics is definitely the stronger of the two. I liked Orconomics leaps and bounds better than Kings of the Wild. If he can accomplish with Son of a Lich what he did in Orconomics, Zachary Pike is going to be my favorite fantasy comedic writer of all time. And that's being said, having only read one of Terry Pratchett's books so far, and arguably one of his worst books so far, but still, I'm having a great time with this world, with this series, and I hope the next book continues to blow me away, especially since I backed his Kickstarter for the release of Dragonfired, so it'd be a huge bummer if I didn't enjoy books 2 and 3 as much as I did Orconomics. This next book is going to surprise a lot of people who follow the channel and have watched some of my reviews, because the first book in the series I didn't care for that much. It was a good book, it just didn't click with me, it didn't resonate with me. I didn't appreciate what the author was trying to do. So this next book on my series is Howling Dark by Christopher Ruocchio. It's the second book of the Sun Eater series. And like I said, anybody who's watched my review on Empire of Silence is probably baffled that Howling Dark made this list. The book was good, but it definitely didn't live up to the hype or expectations that I had going into the first book. And yes, I understand what he was trying to do with his references and relationship with Dune. I understand what he was trying to do, but I didn't necessarily appreciate it. I wasn't able to appreciate Empire of Silence for what it was because I kept getting thrown out of the story and just thinking about Dune. So you're probably wondering, why is it in my top 10 most anticipated of 2024? And there's really two reasons. The first reason is the respect I have for the author himself. If you watch the discussions he has with other booktubers in the community, you'll see that he is like a mini science fiction fantasy historian. His life is like consumed with this community, his genre, and his art, which just makes you want to support the guy. However, that wouldn't make it one of the top 10 most anticipated of 2024. That's the second reason. And the second reason is that the last quarter of Empire of Silence was truly incredible. And what's mind-baffling to me is that it seemed to be the most original. It got me excited for the future of Sun Eater and to what's to come. And then if you ask anyone who quotes or claims that Sun Eater is one of the greatest science fiction or space fantasies out there, they all cite Empire of Silence as being a rough entry to the series, and Howling Dark as one of the best in the series. So both of those reasons are why Howling Dark is on this list, and I really hope I have a better experience with the second book. Moving on, the fourth book on this list is one that probably doesn't come as a surprise for anyone who's watched the channel. It's going to be Earth of the New Sun by Gene Wolfe. Anyone who's watched the channel this year knows that a huge portion of this year was consumed by the Book of the New Sun. Both the original read-through and then essentially the re-read-through while listening to Alzabo Soup. And even though I wanted to jump straight into Earth of the New Sun, more than anything, I just wanted to stew in the story and appreciate the original for what they were before moving on with the rest of the series. Well, let me tell you what. I stewed in it, I revisited it, and now I can say that I am thoroughly enthused to continue the series in 2024. The next book on the list is a book I was planning on reading about a year ago now, but because of different circumstances, it kept getting pushed off, and that is The Lonesome Crown, the third and final book of the Five Warrior Angels trilogy by fellow booktuber Brian Lee Durfee. Like I said, I was supposed to read this of November of last year. I made November of 2022 Brian Lee Durfee month when I started The Forgetting Moon and planned to read through the complete trilogy by the time The Lonesome Crown came out at the end of November. However, they're big old thick book. They're big boys. So by the end of November, I had only finished the first two. Then the release of The Lonesome Crown was delayed in getting to me at least. And they never came out with the audiobook. And by that time, I've been assuming essentially only audiobooks since then. So yeah, I've been dying to jump back into this world, but the audiobook still hasn't come out. I've been researching, refreshing, trying to see when it comes out. And guys, we finally have a date, or at least this is what's posted online. And that's December 26th of 2023. So I'll be picking it up day one, and I plan on reading this early 2024. Moving on to the next book, I want to talk about something I did not as well this past year as I did the previous year, and that is my palate cleanser books. I'm going to need some more palate cleansers this year if I'm going to do it right. And that brings in this next book, which is The Light Fantastics, Book 2 of Discworld by Terry Pratchett. And I know I'm not supposed to read these books in order. Everybody says that you can essentially skip the first two. They're not Pratchett's greatest work, but like I said, I'm having a great time, and I'm really glad I started with the series in this order, because the first book was exactly what I needed when I needed it. It was a soft magic system that was truly fantastical. Like, it was magic that felt like magic, and I needed that at the time. Which is why The Light Fantastic has made it onto the list, and I have no doubt that other Discworld novels are going to be making it into my reading year of 2024. Next book on the list is going to be God Emperor of Dune. And here's a spoiler alert for my top 10 favorite series of all time that I'll be making in 2024. Dune's on there. Like, the original Dune trilogy is high up on that list. Last year, I was introduced to Dune, and I continued that story this year with Dune Messiah and then Children of Dune. And finishing Children of Dune was just a surreal experience for me. Similar to Book of the New Sun, I didn't want to move on. Except I think in Children of Dune, I felt more hungover after finishing Children of Dune. Like, I didn't want to read any other book. I didn't want to read any other story. I just needed to reminisce, to stew in that story for a moment and truly appreciate what I had just read. But now that I have moved on and have started reading other books, I want to get back to the world of Dune in 2024. So I'm going to be picking up God Emperor of Dune, and I wouldn't be surprised if I read more, but I think I will probably slow down with my Dune and spread it out. Maybe one every 6 months, or maybe one a year, until I'm done with at least the first 6 stories of Dune. I know a lot of people say to stop at God Emperor of Dune. Yes, I know that. It's kind of like a good stop. It's at the end of the Golden Path. But if you watched my pet peeves video, you know that, like, finishing series I started, what used to be a pet peeve of mine is becoming less and less the more series I start. But there's still something about it that, like, for a series this good, I've got to finish at least Frank Herbert's books in the series. Anyways, moving on. The author of this next book is going to sound very familiar because I've mentioned him already in this video, and this book is The Wizard by none other than Gene Wolfe. It's the epic conclusion to the duology known as Wizard Knight, with the first book being The Knight and the second book being The Wizard. So you would think it'd be named The Night Wizard, but of course if you know Gene Wolfe, it makes sense that it's called Wizard Knight. I read The Knight in 2023, and it made my top 10 favorite books of the year, and honestly, the series might be one of my favorite of all time. Gene Wolfe in the year of 23 has gone from being the author of my favorite book of all time, Shadow of the Torturer, to the author of my favorite series of all time, Book of the New Sun, to just being what I consider the greatest author of all time with The Knight. Next up is the sequel to probably the most controversial book I read last year and also made it onto my top 10 videos of 2023, which is The Illiarth War, book 2 of the Chronicles of Thomas Covenant, and it's the sequel to Lord Fal's Bane, which I said is the controversial book. I'm really hesitant to continue the story because I feel like it can't get better than the first book. I feel like if the second and third book of the original trilogy were as good as the first, despite the controversy, this would still be known today and more well talked about in today's day and age if the second and third were as good as the first. And while the first book doesn't serve as a complete story, like there's more to the story, it did end in a way that could make it a standalone. So I've been hesitant to continue. But like I said, once again with my pet peeves, if I find a series I like, I'm going to finish it. Alright, and this next book would be the last book on the list. It was my last until an announcement was made. So actually I'll just say that one first. Wind and Truth by Brandon Sanderson, the last book of the first sequence of Stormlight Archives. That is, of course, one of my most anticipated books of 2024. But honestly, didn't know whether or not I was going to throw it in there because I honestly don't know if I'm going to be able to get through it. December, I think, is going to be a very busy month for me next year. So I can actually see myself having to wait a whole month before being able to actually read Wind and Truth when it comes out. But that, of course, is it's probably the number one most anticipated book of 2024. But besides that book, this would have been the last on the list, which is Fires of Heaven, the 5th book in the Wheel of Time by Robert Jordan. And my journey with the Wheel of Time has been a wild one. When I started BookTube, I did not really have interest in the series. My only interest in the series was really its reputation. That and the fact that it had been written by Brandon Sanderson, who at the time was my favorite author of all time. So throughout my BookTube journey, I've gone from having no interest to gaining interest to literally making a pros and cons video on this channel to deciding to read it. And then I read the first 4 books of it in the year 2022. And book 4 was honestly one of the greatest books I have ever written, period. It is one of the best books I have read, with the first one also being really well done. But finishing on that 4th book, I left the Wheel of Time on a high note, and I've been hesitant to come back because I know I'm slowly approaching the slog, and I wanted to wait till I had a chunk of time to knock out the next few books of the Wheel of Time. But I'm fortunate in the fact that in the next few weeks, I'm going to be traveling a lot, and that traveling means a lot of audiobook listening. And right around that time, my Libby app is getting ready to deliver books 5, 6, and 7 of the Wheel of Time. So I'm hoping that travel time lines up with the Wheel of Time so I can listen to those back to back to back during all these travels here in the next couple weeks. But with Fires of Heaven being the 10th book on this list, that brings it to the end. Those are my 11 most anticipated reads of 2024. I'll be dropping the rest of my 2024 TBR in a TBR tier list here pretty soon, so be on the lookout for that. Like and subscribe to get notified, and until then, I hope you're out there reading cool new books and exploring cool new worlds, and until then, I'll be back soon. Thanks for watching.